My name is Clara, and for most of my life, I've believed in the quiet, steady beauty of things built slowly. I find it in the watercolor paintings I attempt on Sunday afternoons, in the slow bloom of the peonies in my small garden, and in the patient work of guiding a 5-year-old to finally write their own name. I thought my life was one of those beautiful things, built brick by brick with trust and gentle love. I was 27, a kindergarten teacher at the Willow Creek Community School, and I was about to marry the man I'd loved since I was 22. They say your wedding day is the happiest day of your life. They don't tell you it can also be the day you learn that the foundation of your world is made not of stone, but of sand. This is the story of that day, but more than that, it's the story of what I chose to build after the tide came in. Willow Creek is the kind of town that holds its people gently. Nestled in a valley carved by a river of the same name, it's a place of century-old oaks, a town square with a gazebo, and neighbors who still bring you soup when you're sick. I'd lived here my whole life, in the same small house with my parents and my younger brother, Thomas, until I moved into a cozy downtown apartment with my fiancé, Liam. Liam. He was as much a part of Willow Creek as the old stone bridge downtown. He worked for his father's company, Thompson and Son Builders, a firm that had constructed half the homes in our county. He had a quiet strength, or so I thought, with kind, slate-blue eyes and a laugh that was low and warm. Everyone in town adored him. "Clara, you've landed a good one," the mothers of my students would say. "Liam Thompson is solid as they come." I believed them. I saw our future stretching out before us like a calm, sunlit road, a house with a porch swing, a couple of kids with his blue eyes, a life of comfortable, predictable love. The ring on my finger, a simple solitaire with a diamond that seemed to hold all the light in the room, was a testament to that future. He'd saved for over a year to buy it, and every time I looked at it, I felt a deep, anchoring certainty. My maid of honor was Sophie. We'd been inseparable since we were 6, when she'd shared her box of crayons with me on the first day of school. She was my opposite in many ways. Where I was quiet and observant, Sophie was a vibrant splash of color. She had a cascade of fiery red hair, a laugh that could make a whole room turn, and a restless energy that drew people to her like moths to a flame. She was my person, the keeper of my secrets, my champion, my other half. When Liam proposed under the stars at Miller's Point, she was the first person I called, and her shriek of joy was so loud it made my ears ring. She threw herself into wedding planning with an almost ferocious enthusiasm. "This has to be perfect, Clara," she declared, her eyes shining. "You deserve the most beautiful day imaginable." She helped me choose the venue, the breathtaking Briarwood estate, with its sprawling lawns and gardens that sloped down to the river. She sat with me for hours, debating the merits of lemon elderflower versus vanilla bean cake, helping me choose the soft lavender of the bridesmaid dresses, and painstakingly addressing every single invitation in her elegant, flowing script because my own handwriting was, as she lovingly teased, teacher scrawl. "He's so lucky to have you," she'd said one afternoon, as we sat surrounded by swatches of lace and ribbon. She squeezed my hand, her expression serious. "You're the most genuine person I know, Clara. You deserve every bit of this happiness." I trusted her. I trusted them both with the unquestioning faith of a child. The final weeks before the wedding were a happy, hazy blur of fittings and final preparations. My family was ecstatic. My mother cried every time she saw my dress hanging in its protective bag. My father, a man of few words, would quietly practice his father of the bride speech in the hall mirror. And my great-aunt Eleanor, my grandmother's sister, had flown in from the coast. At 84, she was whip-smart and had a way of looking at you that felt like she was reading the table of contents of your soul. The night before the wedding, she sat with me in my childhood bedroom. Her hands, wrinkled and soft as old leather, held mine. "Marriage isn't about the party, sweetheart," she'd said, her voice a gentle rasp. "The party is easy. It's the quiet Tuesday nights that test you. It's choosing to see the best in each other when you're both at your worst. Make sure you're marrying a man who chooses to see you, Clara. All of you." I nodded, confident that I understood. Liam and I had faced challenge as me struggle to find a teaching position after college, the stress of his father's health scare. We were solid. We were ready. I fell asleep that night with a smile on my face, dreaming of walking through the gardens of Briarwood Estate toward my future. June 12th dawned clear and bright, a perfect blue sky arching over Willow Creek. A gentle breeze whispered through the lace curtains of my old bedroom, carrying the scent of Mom's climbing roses. For a fleeting moment, I was a little girl again, feeling that profound sense of safety that only a childhood home can provide. Then I remembered. Today was my wedding day. The house was already a hive of gentle activity. I could hear Mom humming in the kitchen, the clatter of pans a sure sign of her nervous energy. Dad was on the phone, his voice calm and steady as he confirmed the transport arrangements. I stretched, a deep sense of peace settling over me. All the work was done. All that was left was to step into the dream we had so carefully built. My phone buzzed on the nightstand. A text from Liam. "Morning, beautiful. Can't wait to see you. I love you." I smiled, my heart doing a little flip. "Love you more. See you at the altar, soon-to-be husband." Another buzz. It was Sophie. "It's here. Wedding day. So excited I could burst. On my way to the salon, then I'll be right over. It's going to be the most perfect day ever." The morning passed in a whirlwind of hairspray, mascara, and the happy chatter of my bridesmaid Sophie, my cousin Maya, and Liam's sister, Chloe. My dress was a dream of ivory silk and delicate lace, simple and timeless. When I finally looked in the mirror, a bride looked back at me, a woman on the precipice of everything she'd ever wanted. "Oh, honey," Mom whispered, her eyes already welling with tears. "You're just radiant." Great-Aunt Eleanor sat in the wingback chair in the corner, a silent observer. Her gaze met mine in the mirror, and she gave me a small, slow smile. There was something in her eyes, a flicker of something I couldn't name, pity, perhaps, or knowing sadness. It was gone in an instant, and I told myself I'd imagined it. By noon, we were on our way to the Briarwood Estate. The ceremony was scheduled for 2 o'clock. Everything was running like clockwork. The estate was a fairy tale brought to life. Lavender and white peonies spilled from every vase. The white chairs were arranged in perfect, curving rows before the grand oak tree where we would say our vows. The reception tent glowed in the afternoon sun, tables draped in crisp linen, waiting for our celebration. "It's perfect," I breathed, clutching Sophie's arm. "You're perfect," she said, her smile brilliant. Liam is going to be speechless. We had an hour before the ceremony, so I settled into the bridal suite, a beautiful room overlooking the gardens. The photographer was off with Liam and the groomsmen, and I found myself picturing him, wondering if he felt the same overwhelming sense of rightness that I did. At 1:30, Sophie said she was going to double-check on the string quartet and make sure the floral arrangements on the aisle were just so. "Be right back," she promised with a wink. "Don't smudge that lipstick." At 1:45, my phone rang. It was Brenda, our wedding coordinator. "Clara, honey, just a little heads up," she said, her voice professionally cheerful. "Liam seems to be running a few minutes behind schedule. Nothing to worry about, I'm sure. Just some traffic." A small, cool flutter of anxiety started in my stomach. Liam was punctual to a fault. "Okay," I said, trying to keep my own voice light. "Thanks for letting me know. We'll just push the start time to 2:15. It's totally normal." I hung up, trying to quiet the unease. It was probably nothing. Nerves. A last-minute errand. But at 2:05, Brenda called again. Her voice had lost some of its professional sheen. "Clara, we still haven't heard from him. His phone is going straight to voicemail." The flutter became a cold, heavy knot. "What do you mean? What about his best man, Mark? Or his father? They're here. They're trying to reach him, too. I'm sure there's a simple explanation." I tried calling Liam myself. Voicemail. I sent a text. No reply. The green checkmark indicating it had been delivered felt like a mockery. "Where's Sophie?" I asked my cousin Maya, who was hovering by the door, her face a mask of concern. Maya's brow furrowed. I haven't seen her since she went to check on the musicians. That was almost an hour ago. The knot in my stomach tightened until I could barely breathe. I tried calling Sophie. Straight to voicemail. By 2:20, the guests were growing restless. A low murmur of confusion drifted up from the gardens. My parents appeared in the doorway of the suite, their faces taut with a mixture of worry and forced calm. "Sweetheart," my dad said, his voice strained. "We're trying to figure this out. There has to be a reason." But a terrible, unthinkable thought was beginning to form in my mind, connecting two missing people into one unbearable equation. Liam and Sophie. Both gone. Both unreachable. On my wedding day. "The hotel," I said, the words coming out in a choked whisper. "Liam stayed at the Linden Inn last night. To honor the tradition of not seeing the bride." Mom took a step toward me. "Clara, maybe we should just wait here. Let your father and Mark handle it." No, the word was sharper than I intended. I was already moving, gathering the heavy silk of my skirt. "I need to know. I need to know where he is." The Linden Inn was a charming, historic hotel just a 10-minute drive from the estate. Great-Aunt Eleanor, moving with a surprising agility, met me at the door to the bridal suite. "I'm coming with you," she said, her tone leaving no room for argument. "Aunt Eleanor, you don't have to." "Child," she said, her sharp eyes holding mine. "I've lived long enough to know the difference between a minor hiccup and a brewing storm. You shouldn't face a storm alone." The drive felt like an eternity. My hands trembled in my lap as I smoothed the wrinkles from my dress, a futile, repetitive gesture. My mind raced, creating and dismissing a dozen benign scenarios. He was sick. His car broke down. A family emergency he couldn't talk about yet. Maybe. But deep down, in the place where our truest instincts live, I think I already knew. The lobby of the Linden Inn was quiet and elegant. The young woman at the front desk looked at me in my wedding dress with wide, compassionate eyes as I explained the situation. "Room 312, she said softly, handing me a spare keycard. "The elevator is just to your left." My family huddled around me as we ascended to the third floor. My brother, Thomas, was furiously texting, trying to get information from the groomsmen. Mom was crying silently, and Dad's jaw was set so tight I was afraid his teeth would crack. Only Aunt Eleanor was calm, her small, firm hand resting on my arm, a silent anchor in my churning sea of fear. The hallway was long and hushed, carpeted in a deep forest green. Room 312 was at the very end. The honeymoon suite. He'd booked it as a joke, saying he wanted to practice being a husband in style. I stood before the heavy oak door, the keycard trembling in my hand. I could hear a faint sound from within, music, playing softly. "Clara," my mother whispered. "Maybe we should knock." But I was beyond knocking. I was beyond politeness. I needed the truth, no matter how ugly. I slid the card into the lock. The light blinked green. I pushed the door open. The room was dim, the heavy blackout curtains drawn against the bright afternoon sun. It took a moment for my eyes to adjust, a moment for my brain to process the scene before me. The air was thick with the cloying scent of stale champagne and perfume. Clothes were strewn across the floor. Liam's wedding tuxedo, crumpled in a heap. And beside it, a bridesmaid's dress. A lavender bridesmaid's dress. Sophie's dress. And there, in the center of the vast, unmade bed, were Liam and Sophie. They were asleep, tangled together in the white sheets. Her fiery red hair was a stark splash of color against his bare chest. His arm was thrown possessively across her waist, holding her close even in sleep. An empty bottle of champagne stood on the nightstand next to two glasses. The sight didn't just break my heart, it vaporized it. The air rushed from my lungs in a silent scream. The room tilted, the edges of my vision going dark. Behind me, I heard my mother's horrified gasp, my father's sharp, guttural curse. Thomas made a sound of pure, visceral disgust. But I couldn't move. I was rooted to the spot, a statue in ivory silk, forced to witness the complete and utter demolition of my life. Every shared laugh, Every whispered promise, every moment of trust one had ever placed in these two people replayed in my mind, now tainted and grotesque. How long? The question was a deafening roar in the sudden silence of my head. How many times had she helped me plan this wedding, her eyes shining with false sincerity, while she was sleeping with my fiancé? A sound escaped my lips, a strangled mix of a sob and a laugh. The sheer, tragic absurdity of it was almost comical. The shifting light from the open doorway must have disturbed him. Liam stirred, his eyes fluttering open. They were unfocused at first, then they found me. He saw me standing there, in my wedding dress, flanked by my horrified family. The color drained from his face, leaving it a sickly, waxy white. "Clara," he breathed, scrambling to sit up, his sudden movement waking Sophie. "Clara, I can explain." "Explain?" My voice was a ghost of a whisper, but it sliced through the still air. "Explain what, Liam? Explain why you're naked in bed with my best friend? On our wedding day? Explain why 200 people are sitting in a garden waiting for a groom who couldn't be bothered to show up." Sophie was awake now, her eyes wide with a terror that was almost satisfying to see. She clutched at the sheet, her face a mess of shame and disbelief. "Clara, oh God, Clara, please," she stammered. "It's not what it looks like. It's not what it looks like?" I finally found my voice, and it was laced with a cold, sharp clarity I didn't know I possessed. "It looks like my entire life has been a lie. It looks like the two people I trusted more than anyone on this earth have been making a fool of me for months. So please, Sophie, enlighten me. Tell me what it actually is." They had no answer. There was no answer. Slowly, I turned to face my family. My mother's face was streaked with tears. My father looked like he was contemplating violence. And my great-aunt Eleanor, she wasn't looking at them. She was looking at me, her gaze steady and unwavering, waiting. It was in that moment, under her watchful eye, that something inside me shifted. The hurt was a vast, gaping wound, but beneath it, a tiny, hard kernel of something else began to form. It felt like resolve. "Call them," I said, my voice quiet but firm. "What, honey?" my mom asked, confused. "Call his parents. Call Chloe and Mark. Call Brenda, the coordinator," I said, my voice gaining strength. "Tell them to come here. To room 312 of the Linden Inn. Tell them the wedding is off, but they need to see why." "Clara, no," Liam pleaded, fumbling for his pants. The panic in his eyes was stark. "Please, let's just talk about this. Privately." "Privately?" I spun back to face him, the cold kernel in my chest growing into a shard of ice. "You want privacy after you chose to humiliate me in the most public way imaginable? You don't get to hide now." I pulled out my own phone, my hands surprisingly steady, and started dialing. "Mrs. Thompson? It's Clara. I need you and Mr. Thompson to come to the Linden Inn right now. Room 312. "Yes, I know. Just come. And bring Chloe." The room began to fill, not with wedding guests, but with witnesses to a tragedy. Liam's parents were the first to arrive. Mrs. Thompson, a woman who had always treated me like a daughter, took one look at the scene at me in my dress, at her son hastily pulling on a shirt, at Sophie cowering under the sheets, and her hand flew to her mouth, a strangled sob escaping her lips. Mr. Thompson's jovial face hardened into a mask of pure, undiluted fury and disappointment. More people came. Chloe, her face crumpling in disbelief and horror as she looked from her brother to the woman who was supposed to be my maid of honor. Mark, the best man, stood in the doorway, shaking his head slowly, his expression one of profound disgust. Liam and Sophie were finally dressed, standing like prisoners awaiting their sentence. "It was a mistake," Liam kept repeating, his voice desperate. "A stupid, drunken mistake. It didn't mean anything, Clara. I love you." "It just happened," Sophie added, her voice a pathetic whisper. "We were talking, one thing led to another. We regret it more than anything." I looked at them, at their pathetic, self-serving excuses, and the last vestiges of my love and friendship for them turned to ash. I walked over to the bedside table where Sophie's purse lay open. Her phone was inside, along with her wallet. I didn't need to look for evidence of a longer affair. The truth was already so glaringly obvious. This wasn't a mistake. This was a pattern. This was who they were. How long? I asked again, my voice low and dangerous. They both stared at the floor, the silence their confession. It doesn't matter, I said, answering my own question. I turned to address the silent, horrified audience crowded into the hotel room. I want everyone to understand something. This isn't about one mistake. This is about a fundamental lack of character. About a deep and prolonged betrayal that they hid behind smiles and hugs and wedding plans. I looked at Liam. If you had doubts, if you wanted to be with her, you owed me the truth. You owed me the respect of ending things with dignity. Instead, you let me plan this wedding. You let me stand in front of my mirror this morning believing I was the happiest woman in the world. You let me become a spectacle. Then I turned to Sophie. And you. You helped me pick out the lavender for your dress. The dress you took off in this room with my fiancé. You held my hand and told me I deserved happiness while you were stealing it from me. I'm sorry, she wept. Clara, I am so sorry. Sorry is a word, I said, the ice in my veins making me feel strangely powerful. It doesn't undo the damage. It doesn't give me back the last year of my life. I looked around at the faces in the Roomy family's pain love, the Thompson shame, our friend's shock. And in that moment, I knew what I had to do. It wasn't about revenge. It was about truth. It was about refusing to be the silent, weeping victim in the story of my own life. We're all going back to the estate, I announced, my voice ringing with an authority that surprised even me. Clara, what are you doing? Liam asked, his voice laced with panic. You're going to ruin us. You already did the ruining, Liam, I said simply. I'm just turning on the lights so everyone can see the mess. I looked at him, then at Sophie. And you're both coming with me. You will stand there and you will bear witness to the consequences of your choices. The drive back to the Briarwood estate was a surreal procession. I sat in the back of my father's car, my wedding dress a stark white symbol of a future that had just been erased. Behind us, a somber convoy followed. When we arrived, the 200 guests were still milling about the gardens, their confusion having morphed into palpable concern. Brenda, the coordinator, rushed toward me, her face etched with relief that quickly turned to alarm when she saw the state of our entourage. Gather everyone, I told her, my voice steady. In the ceremony space. I have an announcement to make. A few minutes later, I was standing where the altar should have been, looking out at a sea of familiar faces. Friends, family, neighbors, my students' parents, all the people who had come to celebrate with me. Off to the side, Liam and Sophie stood, heads bowed, flanked by his shell-shocked parents. My own family stood behind me, a silent, solid wall of support. Great-Aunt Eleanor gave my hand a firm squeeze. The truth is its own shield, child, she whispered. Speak it. I walked down the aisle alone, the grass cool beneath my satin shoes. The rustle of my dress was the only sound. I stepped up to the small lectern where the officiant was meant to stand and took a deep breath. Thank you all for coming today, and thank you for your patience, I began, my voice clear and strong, amplified by the microphone. The murmuring ceased. I know you're all wondering what's going on, and you deserve an explanation. There will not be a wedding today. A collective gasp swept through the crowd. This isn't because of cold feet or a change of heart, at least not on my part, I continued, my eyes finding Liam and Sophie in the crowd. It's because I learned this afternoon that the groom and my maid of honor have been having an affair. The reaction was immediate, shocked cries, angry muttering, people turning to stare at the guilty pair, who seemed to shrink under the weight of 200 pairs of eyes. I'm not telling you this to elicit your pity, I said, and I meant it. I'm telling you this because you are my community. You came here to witness a commitment, and you deserve to know why that commitment was a lie. But I also want you to know that this is not an ending. For me, this is a beginning. I felt a profound sense of clarity wash over me. The pain was still there, a deep, resonant ache, but it was no longer the only thing I felt. Today, I realized that I don't want to be married to a man who lacks the courage to be honest. I don't want to build a life with someone who would betray a vow before it's even been spoken. And I have learned that a friendship that can be so easily broken was never truly a friendship at all. My voice didn't waver. So, while there won't be a wedding, there is still cause for a celebration. Today, I am celebrating the fact that I discovered the truth before I made the biggest mistake of my life. A few people in the crowd started to clap, tentatively at first, then with more confidence. The food is paid for, the band is here, and the bar is open, I announced, a real smile touching my lips for the first time in hours. You're all invited to stay and celebrate with me. Let's call it my Independence Day party. Then I looked directly at Liam. I slowly, deliberately, pulled the engagement ring from my finger. The diamond he'd saved a year for. The symbol of all our broken promises. This, I said, holding it up for everyone to see, is a beautiful ring. But the promise that came with it was worthless. And with all my might, I turned and threw it. It sailed through the air in a glittering arc and landed with a tiny, satisfying splash in the lily pond at the edge of the lawn. The crowd erupted. There was cheering, applause, and my brother Thomas let out a loud, triumphant yes. I saw my father grin, a fierce pride in his eyes. Liam looked utterly broken, not by the loss of me, I suspected, but by the public demolition of his carefully constructed image. He and Sophie, under the furious glare of his father, turned and all but fled, the crowd parting for them in a chilling, judgmental silence. Mrs. Thompson stopped in front of me, her eyes filled with a sorrow that was almost as painful as my own. Clara, she whispered, taking my hands. I am so sorry. I thought I raised him better than this. This wasn't your failure, Mrs. Thompson, I said gently. It was his. As she walked away, I turned back to my guests, to my community. The band, after a moment of confused consultation, struck up a defiant, upbeat tune. My cousin Maya rushed forward and wrapped me in a fierce hug. You are the strongest person I know, she whispered. And as the sun began to set over the Briarwood estate, casting long shadows across the lawn, I was surrounded not by the wreckage of my wedding day, but by a circle of love and support so powerful it felt like it could hold me together. I had lost a fiancé and a best friend, but in their place, I had found something infinitely more valuable, myself. The party went on, a strange and wonderful celebration of a disaster averted, and for the first time in a very long time, I felt truly, completely, gloriously free. In the year that followed, I learned to live in that freedom. I moved out of the apartment I had shared with Liam and found a small, sunny place of my own, overlooking the town square. I filled it with books and plants and canvases for my messy watercolor paintings. I poured my energy into my work, developing a new literacy program for my kindergartners that earned me a commendation from the school district. I started hiking the trails around Willow Creek, finding a quiet solace in the strength of my own two legs carrying me up a mountainside. I didn't hear from Liam, but I heard about him. He and Sophie had tried to make a go of it, but their relationship, born of deceit, withered under the harsh light of public scrutiny in our small town. Within 6 months, they had broken up, and Liam had moved away to work for a different construction firm in a city 2 hours away. Sophie, I heard, had also left town. I felt a pang of something, not sadness, but a kind of distant pity for the broken people they were. About 8 months after the wedding that wasn't, my phone rang with an unknown number. I almost didn't answer, but some instinct told me to. Clara. The voice was hesitant, fragile. It was Sophie. I was silent for a long moment. What do you want, Sophie? I asked, my voice devoid of emotion. I just wanted to apologize, she stammered, and I could hear that she was crying. I know it's meaningless now, but I've been in therapy, trying to understand why I did what I did. It wasn't about you, Clara. It was never about you not being enough. It was about me. I was so jealous of your life, of your certainty. You seemed to have everything figured out, and I felt so lost. When Liam started confiding in me that he was scared, that he felt trapped, I encouraged it. I was a terrible person and a worse friend. I don't expect you to forgive me. I just needed to say it. Okay, I said, after a long pause. Thank you for telling me the truth. Goodbye, Sophie. I hung up, a final, quiet click on that chapter of my life. Her apology didn't heal the wound, but it confirmed what I had come to understand. Their betrayal was a reflection of their own emptiness, not my lack of worth. Life continued to unfurl in unexpected ways. I started spending my Saturday mornings at the local bookstore, losing myself in stories. The owner, a kind man named Daniel with warm brown eyes and a smile that reached them, would always save a copy of my favorite literary journal for me. We started talking first about books, then about everything else. Our conversations were easy, unhurried, grounded in a simple, mutual respect. One sunny afternoon, he asked me if I'd like to get dinner sometime. My heart gave a little flutter, a feeling I thought had been permanently extinguished. I was surprised to find I wasn't scared. I knew my own value now. I knew what I would and would not accept. I'd like that very much, I said. Our first date was at a small Italian restaurant with checkered tablecloths. We talked for hours. I told him about my job, my painting, my love for the quiet rhythm of our town. I didn't tell him the dramatic story of my near wedding. I didn't need to. My past was a part of me, but it no longer defined me. As I sit here now, 2 years after that day at the Briarwood estate, my life is nothing like the one I had planned, and for that, I am endlessly grateful. Daniel and I are still taking things slowly, building something brick by brick, with honesty and patience. I was recently promoted to head the early childhood program for the entire school district, a job that challenges and fulfills me in ways I never imagined. My little apartment is filled with light and laughter. Last week, Great-Aunt Eleanor came to visit. We sat on my small balcony, drinking tea. "You look happy, child," she said, her sharp eyes as perceptive as ever. "A deep-down kind of happy." "I am," I told her, and the truth of it settled warmly in my chest. It turns out the worst day of my life was the beginning of my real life. She smiled, a slow, knowing smile. "Sometimes," she said, "the universe has to burn your life to the ground to get you out of a house you didn't belong in the first place." I no longer believe in fairy tales or perfect, sunlit roads. I believe in resilience. I believe in the quiet strength it takes to rebuild from the ashes. I believe in choosing yourself again and again. My life is not a grand, dramatic story. It's a series of small, intentional choices to be honest, to be kind, to honor my own worth, and to build a world on a foundation of self-respect. And that, I have learned, is the most beautiful, enduring kind of love story there is.